Good evening and welcome. I am co-hosting this meeting with Julie Livingston. I'm Eli Spivak. We represent the Planning Sustainability Commission and the Design Commission from Portland. We'll be holding a hearing shortly on the Design Overlay Zone Amendment project. But first, a couple agenda items to kick off the meeting. So opening with items of interest from commissioners, either commission. Any items of interest? Not hearing any. The director's report. Thank you.
Good afternoon. A couple things to report on. First, wanted to share that the City Council has approved our request through the fall bump process to fund continuation of the anti-displacement work and specifically to support resources to engage community organizations in that process. And so the community organizations, specifically Anti-Displacement PDX that we're partnering with for the anti-displacement work, focusing on residents, they're having a community summit at the end of October 30th. And our team is working with leadership of the coalition, and the city team work is progressing. And so we should have, I think, more to share with the commission early next year, working on kind of a terms and scope for that work with the coalition organization. So I wanted to update you on that. Also to make sure, I think you're aware that we have November 6th will be the next hearing for Better Housing by Design for those people that did not have time to testify last time. So we will continue with that work. And then the residential infill work session is scheduled for December 11th. So we will kick off the conversations for residential infill in December. And for the commission members, the remanded fossil fuel zoning amendment for fossil fuel infrastructure, we are scheduled to bring that back to City Council on November 20th. For approval after being remanded on that. So more to come on that. And lastly, I just wanted to bring your attention, Julie had sent out a message about the Budget Advisory Committee. We will start the Budget Advisory Committee meetings here as we embark on the budget process for next fiscal year. We are hoping to have 3 members of the Planning and Sustainability Commission and 3 members of the Community CIC Commission to be a part of that. So hoping that those commission members that are interested in being part of it, I think it's just 3 meetings, is that right? 3 meetings between now and the end of the year, starting in November. So November and December, in January. So 1 November, 1 December, 1 in January. So we hope that those of you that are interested will respond to Julie's email, and so we can have 3 of you represented in that process. Thank you.
Does that indicate we don't have enough respondents yet?
Yes, it does.
Hint given. Thank you very much. The main item let me go next to the consideration of the minutes. This is for the PSE members. Would someone like to
Move adoption?
Move adoption. Thank you, Chris. A second? Second from Seth to adopt minutes from our last meeting of October 8th, 2019. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Passes. And now the main item of our agenda is the Design Overlay Zone Amendment. I'm glad to have a full room here tonight. This is going to be a joint hearing between 2 recommending bodies, the Planning and Sustainability Commission and the Design Commission. The Design Commission is the recommending body of the design guidelines portion of this project. The Planning and Sustainability Commission is the recommending body for the zoning code amendments and the design standards. We have 3 hours of testimony, or 3 hours of time allocated for testimony, sorry. We will see what proves to be the case. But it's a full room. We will have 2 minutes each, and I will be strict on that in fairness to those who have not testified yet. And so when it gets to 2 minutes, I'll give you a prompt. The light will do the same, and you can finish up that sentence, and we'll go to the next person. We'll start off with a brief presentation by staff, then there'll be public testimony, and then we'll give everyone on the commission, both commissions here, a chance to do a round robin to share initial thoughts as staff gets feedback to figure out what preparation they need to make for us as we break into our different commissions to deliberate further. So we'll start with disclosures, and I've got something to read here. While it's not clear whether the proposed changes create a potential conflict of interest for commissioners because the changes affect such a broad class of property owners, in the interest of transparency, we'd like for commissioners to raise their hands if they own a property in the D overlay or if they work for an architectural or development firm. So please raise your hand if you own a property that is currently in the design overlay zone. Okay, we have 2 commissioners. Let the record show that 2 commissioners own property in the design overlay zone. Please raise your hand if you work for an architectural or development firm that builds projects anywhere in Portland. Let the record show that there's 1, 2, 3, 4 commissioners who raised their hand for that. And for those commissioners not in attendance tonight, we'll get their information so that we can report at each meeting after this one on the conflicts or potential conflicts of interest. I'm asking commissioners here to refrain from asking questions of testifiers. We expect to hear from a lot of people today, so we want to give everyone an opportunity to talk. And for those who don't have a chance to speak today, we'll hold written testimony will be held open until November 15th. So if this triggers a nice idea for you, you want to follow up, you can still put it in writing, and we'll have a chance to review it. If you're here to testify, please bring your card up to Julie with a filled out blue card, and she'll give it over to me and to Julie over here. And we'll call testifiers in the order the cards are received. We'll open with testimony invited from the Historic Landmarks Commission, but before that, we'll have a staff presentation. And one last note, as you come up to testify, please state your name so we know who's coming, because I'm not the best at pronouncing them. So staff, Laura, thank you for joining.
Thank you. My name is Laura Lillard with the Bureau of Planning and Sustainability. I just wanted to give a quick refresher of the briefing that we gave 2 weeks ago on the DOZA proposals. So I'm going to quickly go through that. So again, where we are in the process, we published a discussion draft mid-February. We shared that proposal with the public and received hundreds of comments. We hosted 3 open houses, attended neighborhood coalition meetings and other stakeholder meetings, and briefed the Design Commission and the Landmarks Commission. We incorporated public feedback into this proposed draft before you, and we also held a joint briefing on the 8th, so 2 weeks ago, with the Joint Commission, and now we are here. So the proposed draft consists of 4 volumes. The first is the staff report, which gives some a brief bit about the relationship with the comp plan planning principles, also a public involvement summary. It talks about each of the proposals and gives a snapshot of each. And then there's a section called Future Work, which just acknowledges that we heard a lot of feedback from the discussion draft on topics that did not materialize into proposals. So we put together a list of items under Future Work if there is momentum and public interest in these topics. Volumes 2 and 3 are actually the proposals themselves. 2 is the code and map amendments, including the new design standards, and Volume 3 is the new design guidelines. Volume 4 is the appendix. A lists the improvements that BDS has undertaken with both Landmarks Commission and Design Commission. B is a memo from Leland Consulting that was actually created during the assessment, and it basically shares that if all the recommendations that were offered in the assessment were achieved, including the thresholds, the standards and guidelines, and the administrative improvements to the design review process, there would be minimal impacts to housing affordability. Appendix C is a summary of what we heard during the discussion draft outreach, and Appendix D is our consultant testing of some of the initial concepts of the design guidelines and standards that were written prior to releasing the discussion draft. In the staff report, which is Volume 1 on page 3, we included value statements that really grounded our work after we heard from the public. These are paraphrased here just to bring them to your attention. I encourage you to look at them. They may be helpful in the discussion and in understanding what guided us through this draft. They're intended to sort of keep in the back of your mind as you look at the proposals. The proposals themselves there are about 12 of them that fall into 5 buckets. There is the purpose statement, map amendments, thresholds, which include exemptions when a development can use design standards, and triggers for different types of review in design review. The 4th is about the process for reviewing projects in design review, both the code and administrative changes. And the last bucket is the tools, which are the design guidelines and design standards. So I'm going to just briefly go over each of these 5 categories. So we have a new purpose statement in the proposal where we are confirming and asserting that design overlay is a tool for shaping areas that will evolve into the future to take on more growth into places designed for people. Some of these areas have established context, and in some areas, new development is actually setting the context. We took language from our comprehensive plan for this purpose statement, specifically from chapters 3, urban form, and chapter 4, design and development. And we also took this time to list out the 3 tenets that are so important to the design overlay: building on context, contributing to a public realm, and promoting quality and long-term resilience. The purpose statement is an important foundation for the tools. For the map, we did float the idea of expanding the map in our discussion draft to include all neighborhood centers, but we ended up not moving forward with that expansion. So our map amendment in the proposal is to remove the design overlay zone from all single dwelling zone properties, with the exception of Terwilliger Design District. Our thresholds outside the central city, on that left-hand side under exempt, we are consolidating exemptions and making it easier for very small facade and rooftop alterations to be exempt from design standards or design guidelines. We are also exempting residential-only development with 4 or fewer units. Under the design plan check, moving in, we are maintaining that development under 55 feet tall has the ability to use design standards. And gateway development under 35 feet tall will be able to use design standards. And currently, this is not an option for gateway, so this is new for gateway to be able to use the standards. For projects that go through design review in that right-hand column, we are adding a type 1 for very small facade and roof alterations. And then on the upper end of development, for buildings that are greater than 80,000 square feet or taller than 65 feet, we'll go through a type 3 hearing with Design Commission. Type 2 catching everything in between. In the central city, our thresholds are a bit tighter. There are fewer items that are exempt. As is today, there will be no ability to use design standards. We are also adding a type 1 under design review for small alterations. And at the upper end, buildings that are greater than 25,000 square feet or taller than 45 feet will go through a type 3 as well as some alterations. There are quite a few proposals under process. We are updating rules around who can serve on the Design Commission and clarifying that the public at large member is not employed under the list of design professionals. Under B, we are making changes to streamline the process around DARs, those are design advice requests. We are keeping DARs optional. We are limiting them to 1 unless there are multiple buildings. We're requiring public noticing, and we are requiring that DARs be held within 56 days from receiving a complete application. Under C, this is a list of administrative improvements that are not in the code, so those I would refer you to Appendix A for those improvements. Under D, we are clarifying that design review can't require a reduction in proposed FAR. And finally, E, if an applicant proposes a number of modifications to the base zone during design review, they may be required to mitigate the impact of those modifications. The last bucket are the tools, and as you recall from the purpose statement, the 3 tenets listed there: context, public realm, and quality and resilience, support design overlay zone, and both the tools, the new design guidelines on the right and design standards on the left, were rewritten and organized from these 3 tenets. So my final slide today is about testimony. Certainly people are able to testify today, but if they are not able to do so, written testimony via the MAP app, and the link is here, and it's also on our project webpage. People can go online and testify there by selecting DOZA. As of right now, there are over 50 pieces of testimony. I encourage you all to look through it. You may have already noticed several people. I just wanted to highlight one piece of testimony that may come up because it's not included in our proposals. Several people have been testifying from Arbor Lodge neighborhood wanting the M overlay, so I just kind of want to give you a little bit of context around that. We haven't covered it in our materials, and staff did not actually propose any changes to M overlay. This is the center's Main Street overlay. This is actually a new overlay that started with the comp plan updates in 2018. It requires active ground floor uses, and it is mapped at the center of our town centers and neighborhood centers that are designated by the comp plan. So that's what the center's Main Street overlay is. So you might hear testimony on that, but we did not propose to make any changes with the M overlay. We're also happy to answer any future questions about that, but it's not part of our proposal. And that concludes my brief refresher. I hope that wasn't.
Thank you very much. We are now going to proceed with testimony. I've got a nice pile of cards here. If you have intent to speak, please give the card to Julie. And a reminder, we'll do 2 minutes of testimony each. We'll call people up in batches of 2 with a little heads up for those next. And after 2 minutes, you'll finish up your sentence and we'll go to the next. And commissioners will refrain from asking questions. Yeah. Daisy?
Just before testimony starts, I want to say thank you all so much for being here to testify. I know our meetings aren't always easy to make because of the time or because of the location, so I just want to say thank you all so much, and especially if it's your first time testifying. Again, thank you and power to you.
Thank you very much. Could Kristen Miner and Andrew Smith please come on up? Kristen and Andrew are representing the Historic Landmarks Commission. They're invited testimony. And next up will be Christy White and Dave Ott. Thank you.
Thank you for allowing the Landmarks Commission to be invited testimony. I'm the chair, Kristen Miner, and we will have a letter to you in a week or so, but tonight with limited time, we will just hit a few of our major comments. So first, I want to say that the DOZA project at this point represents so much work and commitment from 2 volunteer bodies plus staff, and I especially want to give a call out to staff. They responded point by point to an extremely long letter that my commission sent them in May, and everything got a super thoughtful consideration and response. So thank you so much for that. The Landmarks Commission is impressed with how the entire DOZA team has used the 3 tenets of design and made them the backbone of a much improved design review purpose statement, as well as the guidelines and standards. As an organizational principle, as well as a reflection of the comp plan overall, it's really working. While we will have some minor suggestions in our letter, overall, this is a really promising direction for design review. I want to focus in on one of the 3 tenets, context specifically. Design review absolutely needs the area context or vision statements that are currently shelved as future work in section 5 of the volume 1.
That was 2 minutes. Is that 2 minutes? Sorry. Continue on.
Okay.
I'm sorry, I'm not reading the letters right. Thanks.
Short statements that are far more concise than what the historic review uses can be drafted, adopted, and added to the guidelines over time. Special design districts such as Gateway and McAdam could even have their district guidelines replaced with these shorter context statements, perhaps with a supplemental guideline if needed. The very point of DOZA is streamlining the process, not allowing various parties to claim that their interpretation of the context is the correct one. So using context as a major design tool doesn't mean that areas won't change and grow. All right, sorry, what was that?
Oh, I'll ask the wrap up if you could.
Okay. It simply means that someone has done the work of defining what's important in a local setting in a public process. We strongly agree with Chair Schultz that this context work must now be included as a framework for the DOZA package.
Thank you very much. Andrew.
Andrew Smith, representing the Historic Landmarks Commission as well. And as Kristen said, we do see a lot of positive changes contained within the proposed draft. A few more include the package of administrative improvements. We believe those are well designed, concise, and informative. Some of those tools are already being used as part of our historic landmarks and I believe design commission hearings as well, and they've been to the benefit of the process. The list of exemptions from design review and design standards have been greatly cleaned up and streamlined. As Laura mentioned before, the proposal introduces type 1 design reviews, which we feel are important as well as a connection point for owners to get feedback from staff and potentially neighbors quickly and inexpensively before they proceed with the project. It maintains the DAR process, which we think has been very successful, at least with Historic Landmarks Commission. Design is an iterative process, and DARs are a useful tool in responding to the nature of that iterative process. And then inclusion of sustainability in the guidelines is really critical. Taking sustainability to another level, though, we are seeking even more incentives for adaptive reuse. An AIA call to action in 2018 outlined 4 strategies for the construction industry to respond to climate change. Of those, the foundational strategy was adapt and retrofit existing buildings. Studies have proven that even the most sustainably designed new building project has a carbon footprint that is several times that of an adapted existing structure. We all need to push the construction industry to change, and including stronger incentives in the standards will literally better meet every single one of the comp plan guiding principles. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next, we'll have Christy White and Dave Ott. And I'll mention, if anyone has small children or special accommodations that you can't stick around the whole time, please let Julie know and we can try and slip you in.
Hi, thank you. Christy White. 33825.035 is the amendment that we think should be reconsidered. This is an amendment that allows the Design Commission to reduce density when the project involves transfer sector FAR. There are at least 2 reasons why we're asking you to reconsider this particular amendment. One is a very legal reason, which is the 2018 Code Amendments to CC 2035 granted transfer sector FAR as of right under a clear and objective standard. There is no discretion in granting that transfer sector FAR or allowing you to transfer it to another property within your same transfer sector. Because the plan district under the code supersedes any lower tier regulation like an overlay zone, you can't grant in the plan district by right what you then can take away in a lower overlay zone because that regulates the same specific topic and is inconsistent, and therefore the higher tier takes over. So we'd ask you to look at that and reconsider. The second reason is a bigger reason, which is when CC 2035 went through, it was a complete comprehensive rewrite of the FAR and height rules and took us from 18 FAR bonuses down to 3, and those 3 are much more difficult to achieve now. Affordable housing fund, or seismically upgraded historic transfers are the primary ones. Because those are harder to achieve to get to 3 to 1, the transfer sector FAR actually allows you to cross-subsidize your project and allows you to afford the first 3 to 1 because you can buy other sector FAR at a cheaper price and get up to your height limit. And of course, that's a 3-legged stool, right? So now we have the 3 to 1, the transfer sector, and you get to bonus height by earning at least 1 to 1. If you take away transfer sector FAR, you're breaking one leg of that stool, and we believe that'll have a pretty big impact on projects reaching the intended density in the central city. Last, I just want to say that lawyers aren't usually involved in design review, and I'm happy to say that we've been much less involved over the last 2 to 3 years because of incredibly good changes in the design review process. One, this focus on the primary objectives of quality, context, and public realm has been amazing in terms of disciplining the process. The fact that the leadership on the Design Commission and the commission members have clearly gone through a process of learning how to orchestrate that hearing and are really well educated about the process has helped with certainty and clarity. And lastly, I'm going to make a plug for not just one DAR. Those DARs are so valuable, and I think that if you limit DARs to one DAR and don't allow the commission and the applicant to have a conversation about whether another one is necessary, what you're going to end up with is delays in the formal design review process.
Thank you very
So,
much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Dave Ott?
Hi. Hi. Dave Oddie, partner with Holst Architecture at 110 Southeast 8th Avenue in Portland. I'm here to commend the DOZA process. I've tracked it quite closely over the last few years. I applaud the simplified guidelines. I think having the as Patty Tillett calls it, the 10 commandments is a great way to go. I support keeping DARs. I also agree with Christy that we should allow unlimited DARs. I don't see any reason to limit to one. I am concerned about the standards, making sure that they're clear and objective. I think you're probably going to hear about that a lot tonight, but keeping that lens as you look at all the standards. But mainly I'm here to strongly oppose footnote 2 in table 825-1. That is the footnote that exempts affordable housing from a type 3 review. I strongly oppose that footnote for a couple reasons. First, just because of equity. By exempting affordable housing from a type 3 review, you're reducing the public process in public, fewer opportunities for people to get involved. You're reducing the level of review, which will reduce the expectations for that project, which will inherently reduce its quality. That reduced quality will create stigma for affordable housing. When in a time when I design a lot of both market rate and affordable housing, we try to give everything an equal shake. The other reason that I oppose it is it won't yield results. There's no proof that allowing affordable housing to go through a type 2 instead of a type 3 will result in more units or faster units. I think the reason why this exists in DOZA is because design review is often a scapegoat for why things take so long. This is actually backed up in your DOZA draft report for affordability by the Leland Consulting Group. In their other comments at the very end of their section, they say, as the report points out, design review's effect on development is often conflated with other regulatory frameworks imposed by the city or other government agencies. Developers are attempting to understand the combined effect of multiple new or revised regulatory frameworks, which include inclusionary zoning, inclusionary housing, and TDMs, transportation demand management.
I'll ask you to wrap up now. Thank you.
Therefore, it's possible that frustration with the overall regulatory environment will be directed at design review. So I just ask you that that everybody deserves good design, and please help me ensure that everyone can get it. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next up, we have Tony Bernal, James Carpentier, and after them, we'll have John Carter and Jim Gorter. Is this Tony?
I'm Tony.
Welcome.
Thank you. So my name is Tony Burnell, and I work for Transition Projects, an agency that serves people experiencing homelessness. We are our community's primary provider of temporary emergency shelter. We also develop low-income housing, and we serve...
Can you speak
Sorry.
into a mic, please?
You bet. We also develop low-income housing and serve more than 10,000 people each year. We strongly believe that buildings designed for people who are low income should be well designed and should promote dignity for the people living in them. We are concerned that the code amendment, the draft code amendment, would exempt some affordable housing from a Type 3 review. All affordable housing deserves the thoughtful attention of a community-driven design review. Exempting affordable housing from a Type 3 review also limits the opportunity for public comment, which we have found critical to good projects. It's important that our neighbors have input into the buildings that go into our communities. We'd ask you to consider not exempting affordable housing from a Type 3 review. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Is James Carpentier here?
Hi, James Carpentier here on behalf of the Northwest Sign Council, representing the on-premise sign industry. And currently the sign code Title 32 requires signs that are greater than 32 square feet in an overlay zone subject to design review. The DOZA draft proposes no changes being made to this requirement. We believe to maintain the 32 square foot threshold for design review is not alignment with the many stated goals which have been mentioned already, and refers to the design review process being more efficient and less time consuming for applicants. Therefore, we request that the both commissions consider the following suggestions. For signs be subject to design review in excess of 100 square feet, and I'm not going to read all the zones, but in the zones that have a 200 square foot maximum sign area and 75 square feet in districts that have 100 square feet maximum area and 50 square feet for those districts with a 50 square foot maximum sign area. And just some of the rationale and thoughts behind that is the increased cost for the business community end users is pretty significant. It's $1,500 typical, plus the sign permit costs themselves on top of that. Increased timeline, typically 2 to 3 months or sometimes more. Unintended consequence, I think, which is important, due to the increased costs and timelines, many signs are installed illegally, and I don't know the percentage, but I'm guessing it's pretty high, without permits. Therefore, they can be not safe or desirable in a lot of different aspects. So, encouraging signs less than 32 square feet, then avoid for those individuals and end users that want to avoid the costs and the long timelines that I mentioned, can result in signs that are not effective or just can't be safely viewed by the intended viewers. And to maintain a 32 square foot threshold for design review is really in conflict with the statement in volume 1, which requires a higher level of review for larger projects and lower level of review for smaller projects or exemptions. So that's what we'd suggest, and we appreciate your consideration of our recommendations. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for
Look at
coming.
that. Less than 2 minutes. All right.
Next is John Carter, followed by Jim Gorder and Brandon Naramore.
Hi, I'm John. I'm just a independent citizen here to comment on the plan. I think I like the idea of commercial ground floor space, or like more areas for people to engage with at street level as part of the plan. I find myself, like, when I walk around like these large housing developments that are built, there's nothing for people that don't live there to do. I think to create an engaging, vibrant city, we need to create destinations where somebody who doesn't live there can engage with the street. Also, people who live there have opportunities to create their own wealth and connection to the space in which they live. So I'd like to see elements of that incorporated. I think a comment that was made before about retrofitting existing space, I think is great. I think for new space, I'd also like to see more just kind of green space incorporated as well, just for people to be able to gather together. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Jim Gorder.
Hi, I'm Jim Gorder, live in Southwest Portland. Every place in Portland is beginning to look like every other place, and every place looks like any place. And if you could be any place, you are no place. The DOZA draft recognizes this and calls for building on the local character and the local identity of place, but I don't believe that it is sufficiently strong enough to do that job. A few recommendations. Expand, don't reduce the areas that are covered by DOZA. Include all neighborhood centers, corridors, and adjacent residential areas. Expand, don't reduce the kind and size of structures covered by design review. Work proactively and preemptively to establish community goals and standards before the project arrives on the site, so that a neighborhood and an architect have a plan on where that area is headed before the project is developed. As called for in the Planning and Sustainability Strategic Plan, engage, educate, and collaborate with residents, businesses, community organizations, and neighborhoods. And finally, if necessary, change the structure and the process to accomplish the above. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next, we have Brandon Naramore and Bob Boyleen, after which we'll have Mary Vogel and Linda Nedekoven.
Dear members of the Planning and Sustainability Commission and Design Commission.
Can you open with your name? Sorry.
Oh, sorry. Brandon Naramore.
Great, thanks.
I am testifying in support of the DOZA proposed draft and the streamlining of standards and guidelines for new development. My only comments and suggestions are: 1, clarifying that in addition to floor area ratio, design review cannot be used to reduce maximum building height. 2, clarifying what context means in the code. We should not be demanding that buildings look like the ones immediately adjacent to them, but rather looking towards what is allowed and can be built in the future. 3, consider having design review hearings closer to the actual community being discussed. For instance, having reviews for East Portland and PCC's Southeast Campus. 4, I suggest Leon Porter's suggestion to include promoting the development of abundant and inexpensive housing in high opportunity areas as bullet point to the mission statement. And lastly, I strongly disagree with suggestions by group that there be neighborhood-specific design and style restrictions for every neighborhood. That would be both overcomplicate projects and lead to equity concerns. Neighborhood guidelines may have noble intentions, but they often have the effect of inequitably blocking needed housing in desirable areas. Further on this point, we should not treat neighborhoods as museum pieces to be preserved in amber, but rather allow neighborhoods to creatively grow and change with time. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much.
Bob Weddle. I'm an architect and planner in Portland, work for LRS Architects, and I serve on the executive board of the Urban Design Panel, UDP. The Urban Design Panel consists of members of the American Institute of Architects, AIA, American Planning Association, APA, and American Society of Landscape Architects, ASLA. We've been working with staff and the consultants on DOZA when the A stood for assessment since 2013 and held over dozen presentations, workshops, and charrettes at the Center of Architecture. We have presented several times to the Design Commission and City Council and written many letters for advisement and support for DOZA. Eventually, DOZA falls into our professional hands to work with our development clients. It has been a long process over the last 6 years. Babies have been conceived, born, and now entering kindergarten during the lifetime of this process. Not necessarily in our meetings, we're not that much fun, but I mention this because the time now is to move the process and adopt it. There is uncertainty until it's in the hands of the users, including architects, planners, and landscape architects that our group represents. Even then, there's going to be some surprises in the development community until we start using it. Most design professionals won't see it until it comes after adoption. We'll be lucky if we get 90 to 95% of it correct. With that understanding, our group has started discussions with the city staff to review the rollout of DOZA after it's adopted and work with them 12 to 18 months after the process to catch those remaining issues and changes to make sure it's for its intended use. The Urban Design Panel is currently preparing a detailed white paper report that will be submitted before November 15th into your record for your consideration that will cover many of the detailed issues. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I've got Mary Vogel next, and
Sorry.
it's just fine. Linda, stay up there. You're next after Mary. Thank you very much.
Okay, thanks. Thanks. I'm Mary Vogel with my small business Plan Green, which has long focused on climate justice principles as well as excellent urban design. I believe that focusing on such principles will bring greater climate resiliency to communities, and that's why I really support this DOZA process. I especially support the testimony submitted October 21st by Ted Labey for Urban Green Spaces Institute, and also that submitted by Micah Meskel for Portland Audubon. They've done far more extensive comments than I could fit in here. They both address the need for more emphasis on green infrastructure in the standards while still supporting climate justice and affordability. I support many of their other suggestions as well, but I'm going to focus on the green factor that urban green spaces especially suggest be integrated into the DOZA design guidelines. Years ago, when Seattle's green factor was first established, I suggested to the director of Bureau of Planning and Sustainability at that time that Plan Green would be happy to do such a code for Portland. In fact, a former Plan Green intern, Carolyn Foster, worked on collecting data for the Seattle program, and I helped her for a day there. It enables developers to choose from a menu of options that include native landscaping, tree planting, eco roofs, green walls, permeable paving, structural soils, on-site water catchment, conservation, and other sustainable stormwater elements. And I give the URL as well. But Green Factor lets developers choose an approach that integrates with their development plan.
And I'll wrap up here if you could.
Okay, so as Judy states, this approach would switch the city from a reactive design review to a proactive design engagement stance.
Thank you.
I really like that. So
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And Linda will be next, and after Linda, we'll have Heather Flint Chatto and Roger Jones. Go for it.
Thanks. I'm Linda Nedekoven, and if I had more time, I'd say more about how much I want to commend the staff for the hard work that's gone into the DOZA proposal. We really appreciate it. The effort is long overdue, but it's still not complete, and I'm here to try to build momentum for some of that future work that's mentioned. I especially want to call your attention to page 52, which speaks in the staff report, which speaks to the need to address a key piece of our city heritage, the streetcar era main streets. First, the perennial question of the 3 C's, compatibility, context, and character. All of our major city planning documents speak eloquently in support of compatibility, yet we often fail to operationalize this vision. Communities in the throes of growth and change need assistance now, last year, the year before, to help identify a common path forward before their very context and sense of place are totally erased. We've learned from Inner Southeast Division how quickly this transformation can occur. Despite community efforts dating from 2001, we've been trying to work as a community to kind of pull together to move our street along in a good direction. We ended up spending 6 years of grassroots effort to develop a set of design guidelines when things started to go so fast. Design guidelines are not the magic answer to everything. We tried to create guidelines that fit a number of inner city corridors, not just Division. It was a means to introduce developers to our local main streets that might also help to address some of those issues that are raised on page 52. Second, in using our new DOZA tools, we need to answer the question of how or whether the relationship of new design to its surrounding context affects the pace of gentrification and displacement. Are there other hidden impacts to the choices that we're making? At a hearing, one of your fellow design commissioners complimented what I also thought was a very fine building while wondering if this was the right place for it. The new building is now located amidst a previously intact block of older residences.
When it comes to the end.
Are naturally, 2 sentences, occurring affordable housing. A new building could have been built there that referenced nearby structures, but this building is big and bold and seems to call for the replacement of everything around it. Does design guidance have a role here? What else can these new design tools help us to see? Perhaps some of these design questions would help with the Housing Opportunity Initiative.
Thank you very much. Heather Flint Chatto and Roger Jones, and after them we'll have Bill Levesque and Lawrence Kamar.
It's going to be just a second.
Good evening.
Roger,
My name is Roger Jones.
One moment, is Heather Flint Chatto speaking next? Oh, you switched order. Switching order is fine. Yeah. Okay. Sorry.
Thank you.
You didn't look like her.
I don't feel like her. I can only say I wish I knew as much as Heather Flint Chatto knows.
Okay.
But I will say that I'm representing the Hawthorne Boulevard Business Association, which has been involved in design forever. It is probably the quintessential Main Street district in Portland. At least we feel that way. And we'll have written testimony that will back up the kinds of comments that I'm going to make. First of all, I'd like to draw attention to something that's quite old. This is a 1995 document that talks about adding density to the top of buildings. This is the image down here is on the corner of 20th and Hawthorne. This is a building that you're familiar with. It has a pizza parlor in it, and yet with the new design, it's got 2 stories of livability above. Those kind of ideas have percolated to the top with us recently and again, and I hope that somebody will take the time to look this up and possibly get in it. We agree that there's certainly a lot of work to do, and the Main Street standards and design guidelines that we've been talking about are critical in my mind and our mind at this time. We need the height is too high as far as design review is concerned. We're believing that 4th story, 28 seconds. 4th story and 75-foot right-of-way will create a tunnel effect again on Hawthorne that is expressed in division, and we don't want to see that happen. What we need to have is design review at a lower level than the 65 feet that the recommended draft shows. Step backs are needed as a key design tool. Also supporting additional design commission areas in the east side. So an east side design commission would be able to relieve some of the obligations of the downtown.
We'll wrap up here.
Yep, I think I have to wrap up. 2 minutes
Thank
is
you.
not long enough, but been at this for about 40 years.
You covered a lot of ground.
Yeah,
Thank you.
it's a lot of work. Heather, are you ready? I could keep talking.
We can move to Bill Levesque. Is Bill present? And then after that will be Lawrence Kamar.
Thank you for all your work.
Thank you very much for coming out to testify.
Hi, I'm Bill Levesque. I am the president of the Hawthorne Boulevard Business Association. Thank you for having us here, and we appreciate all the work that you're doing. First of all, I want to say we support high-density development, and we certainly understand all the inherent objectives in that. In 2016, we adopted the Division Main Street Design Guidelines, and in 2018, our board unanimously adopted the updated guidelines. And our goal, it was and is, to keep the character, or at least manage the development of the character of Hawthorne Boulevard. And certainly that's not unusual in Portland. We all love Portland, and the neighborhoods that we have, the main streets that we have, the character in them, I think is one of the things that everyone here cherishes. And people that move here, they arrive and they say, wow, what an incredible place this is. And so we have an obligation to manage how that development takes place. And I know I'm speaking to the choir. But what we want to ensure is that within the DOZA standards, we have a methodology so that we are at least managing how the character of these neighborhoods takes place. We know that the city will be different 50 years from now, but it's important that we instill these into the standards now. So we encourage Portland to use the 2018 Division Hawthorne Main Street Design Guidelines for DOZA, either as a Southeast Main Street Design Guideline or East Side Main Street Design Guideline more broadly. And we would like to have a Hawthorne Plan District with a reference to the adopted Main Street guidelines. And so in doing this, what we would be doing is building on the work that DOZA is doing, but making sure that we've got an eye for each of the communities that we have to try to make sure that we, as the buildings get taller, we don't want to lose the character that we have. So I appreciate your time.
Thank you very much. I will go to Lawrence Kamar, and after that, we'll have Ann Griffin and David Schulheimer.
If you'd bear with me just a moment, I need to open up a PowerPoint and see if I can make this work. All right, presenter mode. Thank you. And can you also set up the notes, presenter notes? I have presenter notes on here, and that would show up on the bottom. I think I need to. It's a different computer, so.
Would you like to try it out, or we could take someone else and you could take a minute for technical?
Yes, that would be great if somebody else
Okay,
could
let's
speak.
see what we got.
Thank you very
And
much.
Ann Griffin around. Please come on up, and after Ann, we'll have David.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Ann Griffin. I'm the Executive Director for Alberta Main Street. You've been hearing a lot of opinions, and you'll hear several more of people here advocating for guidelines that specifically address the needs of our neighborhood business districts. And I'm here to underscore that point as well. In particular, I would like to make reference to the recommendation of 65 feet as being something that would trigger design review. I think that's way too high for our neighborhood business districts. On Alberta Street, where I work, the maximum height we have right now is 40 feet. It's a CM2 zone. And if something is proposed at a 50 or 55 foot height, it's definitely going to have an impact on our district, but could potentially sweep by without additional review. And just to underscore, I think the broader point that's being made here, our neighborhood business districts really do fuel our local economy, and they're part of what makes Portland Portland. I think we're a city of neighborhoods, and we need to have something in our design guidelines that specifically addresses the character of these important districts. I would support something that was an East Side district, as one of the previous presenters suggested, or something that specifically speaks to neighborhood Main Street districts, like what is in the PDX Main Street Design Initiative guidelines. I'm not saying that neighborhoods won't change. Neighborhoods do change over time, and we certainly would welcome a building that had more residents or more investment. We want those in our local neighborhood districts. But those big 3 C's, including compatibility, is something that has to be there, because if we don't have that, then the character that makes our neighborhood business districts so special, and the economic engine of those in those districts could be threatened. So, thank you.
Thank you very much. Shall we move on down, or would you like to
Please
give it
do.
a try? Okay.
It's going to take me a bit to figure this out.
David?
David Scholhammer, I chair of the Land Use Committee for the Selwood Moreland Improvement League, better known as SMILE. We seek to preserve the wonderful characteristics of our neighborhood while accommodating growth. Thus, the design overlay is an important part of the zoning code for Selwood Moreland. We focus our testimony on the proposed design standards because almost all new construction in our neighborhood follows those standards. Our written testimony provides detailed comments on most of the proposed standards. Please read our written testimony for details on the following items. First, most of our lots are 5,000 square feet. No testing of the standards was done for 5,000 square foot lots or the RM1 or CM1 zones. The smallest lot size tested was 10,000 square feet. The standards should be tested for 5,000 square foot lots and in the RM1 and CM1 zones. Lack of testing results in loopholes such as the one we describe in our written testimony. Testing should specifically look for loopholes. The required 5 points for 5,000 square foot lots appears to be too easy to achieve. Several of the optional standards give points for items that are already commonly done, which reduces the chances that other optional standards will be selected. The optional standards should not give points for common practices. Some of the optional standards, while desirable, do not improve public spaces. The standards should benefit the public realm. The sides of new 4-story buildings are often exposed and more visible than the front of the building. We recommend a new standard to prohibit monotonous blank sidewalls. Finally, we want design standards that reflect our main commercial streets. The Selwood Moreland Main Streets Design Initiative focuses on the special characteristics of our main commercial streets. And the next testifiers after Lawrence will describe that initiative for you. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Lawrence, would you like to begin?
I've gotten it set
Looks like
up.
we're set. Thank you.
All right. Thank you. My name is Lawrence Kamar. I'm an architect and town planner with my firm here in Portland, Oregon.
Oh, thank you. And after this, okay, continue on. Thanks.
Thank you for having us here this evening, commissioners. Portlanders are concerned by the rapid transformation of their main streets as old buildings are replaced by new ones of starkly conflicting character and economic unattainability at times. We have heard loud and clear a public outcry from all corners of the city that new mixed-use buildings often symbolize displacement, gentrification, and a disconnect with the spirit of Portland. One of DOZA's primary tenets is that new buildings should reflect their context. Who could disagree? But the idea of context is a slippery slope if the DOZA report itself has no photographs or mentions of historic buildings, which we maintain should be the foundational inspiration of Portland's context standards. By omitting visual precedences of foundational historic buildings, the DOZA staff seems to be putting their thumb on the scale in favor of allowing developers and architects to randomly create a completely new contextual design vision with each new building. This approach will result in a haphazard vision of the city after the fact. We propose what we call a timeless mixed-use building type to solve this problem. Instead of bogging down into complex differences between each Main Street context citywide, let's focus on discussing design features and characteristics most common and beloved on our diverse main streets, as the DOZA report proposes for future work on page 52. Portland's housing growth should be guided by these foundational Main Street buildings that are the most character-defining buildings of our city, regardless of being in a designated historic district. This timeless mixed-use building type can scale up or down to fit harmoniously on any old Main Street, but just as well could be located on an outer suburban avenue where no such building previously stood.
Okay, we're getting close to the end.
DOZA should define this basic Main Street building type with clear and objective form-based standards and grant developers streamlined approval if they choose to use them. If instead developers want to experiment with the latest SketchUp Pro and Design Magazine fashions, they can proceed with a more rigorous design review process.
Yeah, thank you very much. I'm going to ask the next people to speak. I've got Heather, would you like to speak? You had to pass you over, but you're welcome to come on up now. Okay, technological issues? Okay.
So if there's a way to plug in directly to your monitor, I did that the other day, so I don't know if that's...
I wish I were a techie. That's not actually the truth. Okay, let's get, next we'll have Vicky Degas and Karen Kelly are next, followed by P. Elise Solnick and Paul Leisner. And if anyone's come since we started and you want to fill out a card, please bring it up to Julie and she'll get in the pile. Thank you, Vicky.
Good evening. My name is Vicky Degas, and I'm a member of the Smile Land Use Committee. I am also part of a group that's working with PDX Main Streets. We are a Main Street neighborhood. We have held community meetings. We had a neighborhood walk, attended farmers markets. We even hung out in a QFC parking lot for one Saturday afternoon to get comments from over 100 neighbors on how they felt about the growth, development, and the feel of our neighborhood. Everyone acknowledges that we're growing, and we accept the density that comes with that. What is important is that we're able to grow with sensitivity and keep the character of our neighborhood. We're a neighborhood that's very diverse design, and that's what makes our neighborhood so appealing. Victorian can sit next to Craftsman, new next to old. And what makes that work is the language among the buildings. Those buildings can sit comfortably with each other because they acknowledge each other. They reference each other's roof lines, window placements, and doorways, all without looking the same. It's when a building is designed in a vacuum that it has no relationship to its surroundings and that it sticks out like a sore thumb. And those are always the buildings that the neighbors hate. It's not that it's a new building, it's that it has nothing in common with its neighbors. We want rules and guidelines. We want to expand within the context of what already exists. We need to retain what keeps us the vibrant neighborhood and city we've grown into and that everyone now wants to live in. We strongly believe that at a minimum, Main Street design standards should be applied where the design overlay and the Main Street overlay overlap. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
My name is Karen Kelly, and I'm a member of the Selwood Moreland Business Alliance, and I'm on the Smile Land Use Committee as well.
The Selwood Moreland business community is made up of small, locally owned businesses that all have unique focus. Many of these businesses have chosen Selwood Moreland because of its very special character, its walkability, and its diversity. Our neighborhood boasts bicycle thoroughfares, and it's a direct connection to the Springwater Trail that leads visitors from Portland directly into our lovely collection of restaurants, antique shops, and boutiques. We are an old streetcar neighborhood dating back to 1876, and quite a number of the buildings that were built during that time are still there, along with many new ones that have been added over time. Our many historic architectural styles are key to our charm and the draw that Selwood Moreland has to both its visitors and its current neighbors. Our business association, SMBA, supports PDX Main Street Design Initiative. It focuses on the special characteristics of our main commercial streets, and we feel that it's critical to the continued vibrancy and uniqueness of our business district. Thanks so much.
Thank you. We've got, after Elise and Paul, we're going to have Henry Kramer and Doug Klotz. All right, thank you.
Good evening. My name is Elise Skolnick. I am a retired planner and a vice president of the Alberta Main Street Board. Alberta Main Street is the Great American Main Street award-winning Main Street this year. I hope you all come and visit us. We strongly agree that with what has been said by others up here talking, supporting the PDX Main Street Design Initiative guidelines. There is very much a need for specific guidelines for each of our main streets in this community. Compatibility is not a dirty word. Our inner city has sustained rapid development, not always consistent with the vision of residents and businesses and the city itself over time. Our distinctive urban character is what makes Portland an attractive place for residents and visitors alike. The new canyons of Division Street and Williams Avenue could be anywhere USA. This is not what we want for our main streets. The most sustainable building is one that is already built per Place Economics Donovan Repkema. Historic places garner more economic activity than generic streetscapes. There are locations in the city, especially in the outlying areas, that are ripe for redevelopment and can benefit from innovative architecture and development and increased density. The public needs to weigh in significantly on the DOZA, and that has been lacking from my understanding. My understanding is that there's been one presentation to the Northeast Coalition of Neighborhoods in February and only one other presentation on the east side. This is not enough. Please do right and incorporate the work done by the business districts already with the PDX Main Street Initiative guidelines. We need more community engagement, and please reach out wholeheartedly to all who have a stake in the future of our neighborhoods. We hope to provide additional comments that are more specific to the DOZA at a later date.
Yeah, you're welcome to do so. Thank you. Paul?
My name is Paul Leisner, Southeast Portland. The City of Portland's public involvement principles and the binding goals and policies of the new comp plan Chapter 2 on community engagement require staff to meaningfully engage the community in planning efforts. I served on the committees that developed both of those policy documents and also served as the city's neighborhood program coordinator for 10 years. So I'm very familiar with what good public engagement looks like and doesn't look like. Meaningful public community engagement is essential for the city to plan with the community, not for the community or to the community, which was the old style of planning. I strongly support the great work done by PDX Main Streets. I encourage the Planning and Sustainability Commission and staff to see the incredible value of this community-based work. I've seen many of their presentations in the community. They've been great. When I was with ONI, before it was Civic Life, we also did a great workshop with them for the community. It's been great outreach. I'm very impressed by the outreach that they've done overall over the last 6 years. This group has been a leader in innovative public engagement in very diverse and proactive ways that we haven't always seen the city actually doing. At the same time, there's a major disconnect that we've been hearing between the design and development community and neighborhoods and communities that are actually experiencing the changes. The work of PDX Main Streets is highly professional and extremely valuable work that I encourage you to engage with. This is something that can be easily replicated and used. You don't need to start from scratch. Let's build on the great work that they've done. So I would include the Planning and Sustainability Commission and the staff to collaborate more with PDX Main Streets, use the tools they've created, learn from and build on their great examples of real and meaningful community outreach and engagement. Thank you.
Thank you very much. The next two speakers
I'll
after
go next.
these will be Christopher Brown and Matthew Williams, but first, Henry Kramer.
I'll actually let Doug go first.
Okay.
That's fine.
Hi,
Thank you.
I'm Doug Klotz, speaking for Portland Neighbors Welcome. We're a group of grassroots volunteers who believe housing is a human right. We are dedicated to ensuring that every present and future Portlander can find and keep a safe, stable home that they can afford. Because design review increases cost and risk, and can change who has the power to shape neighborhoods, we should carefully weigh the trade-offs. We think the city should work to reduce barriers to participation, including holding hearings for East Portland projects in East Portland, improving action in online access, and having a design commission that reflects all of the city. We support the DOZA draft with the changes noted here. I'll just do 4 of them. We asked for a change to design review to state that it cannot reduce height in addition to not reducing FAR. ORS 197-307 says the city must allow use of standards for buildings with housing. The city's stance is that they can cut those heights down to 55 feet, and you have to use design review above that. That's an open question, but we think the city could allow the use of standards for the full zoned height in CM3 as well as in CM2. And they should do that. We question the context tenant and guidelines 1 through 4. Context should be the comprehensive plan direction and the adopted zoning in centers and corridors. It makes no sense when building next to a 1-story building to craft a building that relates to that building, knowing that a 5-story building can and will be built there in the future. This is mentioned in guidelines 2 and 3, but should be emphasized. All buildings should be designed to work with the largest building the zoning allows on the adjacent site. And also, the word character is somewhat of a dog whistle, and I think you should reconsider using that. We believe guidelines and standards should not favor a particular style, and we agree with staff that writing neighborhood design guidelines or seeking to adopt them is not the best use of the Bureau's time and resources. The city has more pressing concerns, such as racial justice and other issues in East Portland. So, thank you for your time.
Thank you very much. Henry?
My name is Henry Kramer. I live in Northeast Portland. I own a home in Northeast Portland. I'm also a member of Portland Neighbors Welcome. You've already heard a lot about neighborhood character. I expect you're going to hear a lot more about neighborhood character over the course of the evening. So I want to talk about neighborhood character for a second and how it should factor into the decisions we make about the city that we build. Just thinking about Maslow's hierarchy of needs, of what a human being actually needs to thrive and survive in our world. And the very first thing is food and shelter. That's the absolute thing that at every stage of our city, in the midst of a housing crisis where folks are being priced out of their homes, where folks cannot find a home, that needs to be the first thing that we think about whenever we think about housing. Very low on the list is what a building looks like and how much a person that lives near the building feels about the aesthetics. The most important thing is that we get people in homes, that we get affordable homes built. And to the degree that design review can be an impediment to that, as it often is, we need to remove that impediment. We need to create more opportunities for homes to be built without the artificial impediment of design review or of asking somebody who owns $1 million home in the neighborhood whether they like it or not. We've been doing that for a long time. It makes it really hard to build a new apartment or build any kind of large multifamily home in this community. And that makes it more expensive to move to a new home. It makes it harder to find a new apartment. It makes it harder for families to find new apartments. It makes it harder for people moving to this city or just trying to find a new place in the city to find a new place to live. And we've heard, and I think you'll probably continue to hear about the need to build in outlying areas rather than in the urban core, which is extremely dog whistly. We should be allowing the same standards across the board. We should be ensuring that design review makes it easier to find a home rather than harder. Thank you very much for listening to me.
Thank you very much. So we have Christopher Brown, Machu Williams, and then we'll have Micah Mescal and Anna Eaton or Anna Eaton.
Hello. Hi, my name is Chris Brown. I'm representing Ramsey Signs. I'm here to talk about Title 32 and the way that it impacts the local end user that has to go through this review. A lot of the times when clients come to us, they're in need of signage for their business that's already open. And when they have to go through a design review, it usually takes another month, 2 months to actually get their sign up on the building. And that, of course, comes with extra costs that they have to incur. And I'm really looking to kind of underline what James Carpentier said about increasing the threshold for design review for signs. 32 is really kind of small when it comes to any sort of typical sign that you'll see on a building. And anything larger than that, whether it's the 100 square feet or the 75 square feet or 50 square feet, anything larger can greatly help the local mom and pop business in these communities that want to actually have their business run with a sign. It can be difficult if they don't get it up in time, because we know that the first couple months are crucial for business growth. So we're just hoping to increase the design standards so that the people can get the advertisement that they need.
Great, thank you very much.
Hello, my name is Machu Williams. I live in a neighborhood adjacent to 82nd Avenue, so I would like to second the calls to have more meetings out in East Portland. My mother grew up in the same neighborhood, and so I've witnessed a lot of change over the years, and I've seen families displaced. So I too have a lot of anxiety about what the future of Portland brings for my friends, families, and neighbors. In order to stop this cycle, we should carefully consider design review thresholds and the triggers that mandate them. Design review adds to the costs and expenses for developing in Portland. Time is money. If we are to provide an accessible and diverse city, this decision has weight attached to it and must be considered. Next, I would strongly urge that the height as well as the width, the FAR, as it is recommended, not be allowed to be taken away during design review. Portland needs to build for the future, not the past. We need to keep population growth and urbanization in mind so that the current residents aren't displaced and there's room for people moving here. Our guidelines and standards should be for the future in the 21st century. I am alarmed at the attempts to include incentives to build structures to early 20th century aesthetic standards for two reasons. It may be very well not what Portland needs to address the emerging climate crisis. And two, the early 20th century was a time of exclusion dominated by cultural hegemony of white U.S. Americans at the expense of other cultures. We must consider this when we give preference to certain styles over others. We should avoid incentives that perpetuate this legacy. And I urge you not to give preference to any particular style, as is recommended currently in the proposed document of DOZA. Thank you for your time and consideration of this very important matter in creating a vibrant Portland accessible to everyone, including those not in the room today.
Thank you. Micah and Anna, and after that we'll have Dan Zalko and Mark Wyman.
My name's Micah Mescal, and I'm representing Portland Audubon today. Thank you, commissioners, for taking our testimony. Over the years, Portland Audubon has long advocated for the integration of the built and natural environments to build healthy, safe, complete communities, and we see this as an opportunity, DOZA, to bring some of the city's past processes, whether it's the comp plan, whether it's Central City Plan, or the Climate Action Plan, and the different environmental protections that came with those, and overlay them onto DOZA. We urge the city to place higher prioritization of green infrastructure throughout DOZA. We know that green infrastructure, trees, eco-roofs, stormwater facilities clean our air and water, provide access to nature, address urban stormwater, reduce urban heat island effect, increase efficiencies or energy efficiencies, and provide resiliency in the face of climate change. They also drive our green economy. We submitted extensive comments, but I'll touch on a couple highlights. For QR13, the bird-safe glazing windows, we urge you to make this standard a requirement instead of optional in order to be consistent with the bird-safe glazing standard in the Central City Plan. It synergizes well with building design, reduces solar heat gain, and reduces emissions. For QR 22, regarding eco roofs, we urge the city to return the score for QR 22 to 3 points, as was in previous drafts. And second, we urge that DOZA requires that buildings larger than 20,000 square feet are required to put an eco roof on top, as is in the Central City Plan, to provide continuity. For QR 23, solar energy system, we think there should be an additional design standard option for implementing QR 22 and 23, so solar on top of an eco roof.
I'll ask you to wrap up here.
Which has co-benefits. We have many more. I'll end on that we support the effort to broaden who is considered for the Design Commission. Importantly, to community representatives, especially for marginalized communities, for tenant representatives, and for folks advocating for green infrastructure and energy efficiency.
Thank you very much.
Thanks.
Anna?
My name is Anna Eaton. Thank you for allowing me to voice my concerns regarding the new constructions that this Bureau is allowing to be built on the east side of Portland from the Willamette River up to 82nd Avenue in our beloved city. I am a third-generation Portland resident. I was born in Portland, and I live in my family home that my grandparents purchased in 1928. By Hawthorne and 39th, where my mom was raised, and I've raised my son, who is fourth generation Portland. I recently completed a historical marker on the bulkhead in the front of my home, which includes pages and maps from the 1859 document. That is 108 pages of the entire 360 acres, which was called Paradise Springs Farm, owned by Perry and Elizabeth Prettyman, which confirms that the entire Hawthorne district is 160 years old. I'm extremely concerned about what the city is allowing contractors to demolish and build in our classic, quaint main streets on the east side of Portland. Myself and many East Side residents truly dislike what was allowed to be built on Division. You have allowed, and some contractors have built very attractive, well-built apartment buildings that fit right into the aesthetics of our historic main streets, and I would like to see that continue. I would like to bring to your attention what I deem is the most important piece in the DOZA document, which is page 52, paragraphs 2 and 3. And I implore that the staff at your offices enforce these two paragraphs and make them well-known and mandatory to all future contractors, builders, and architects. I implore that the city incorporate the 6 years of study, planning, and creation of PDX Main Street's dedicated work in crafting plans and designs for the future buildings that safekeep and elaborate the aesthetics of each individual neighborhood Main Street. I also believe that your office should never allow a residential building to exceed 35 feet on the east side, and I would like to see your office encourage contractors to build better and better in neighborhoods east of 82nd, which need rejuvenating and sprucing up rather than destroying our historic main streets. I look forward to your office creating and making available many more community member input meeting places and opportunities prior to granting destruction. Our Multnomah County Elections building is not utilized very often and is staffed year-round. It would be a great place to have a ballot box and make the architects and the contractors put up big posters. And to finally close, I would really like to see that people in our neighborhoods could afford to live in our neighborhoods, because it's contributing right now to homeless population and it's not acceptable. Please enforce that these new buildings are affordable for our current Portland residents by changing the inclusionary affordable housing requirement to be 1 out of 8 instead of 20. Thank you very much for your time.
After Dan and Mark, we'll have Jonathan Conkle and Miles Sisk. Dan.
Good evening, members of the Planning, Sustainability, and Design Review Commission. My name's Dan Zalko, and I oversee real estate planning and sustainability at Portland State University, and I'm here representing the university to express our pleasure for the process so far and the upcoming plans. I would like to applaud BDS and BPS staff for their excellent work and outreach to support and enhance design overlay zone guidelines and requirements. Key to their work has been genuine desire to find the right balance between property owners, developers, businesses, visitors, residents, and students. There has been a clear appreciation expressed throughout the work to date on the impact design review processes has on project costs and schedules, and staff are clearly committed with balancing those impacts with the great importance and value of high-quality, community-oriented design. Most exciting to me is the greater alignment between the city's development review process and a project's design schedule. Thank you for your continued support for the work of city staff in helping to create fair and balanced processes while also helping enhance the built environment across our city. Your support and service is greatly appreciated. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Mark?
Hi, my name is Mark Wyman. I'm here representing the Arbor Lodge Neighborhood Association. Our testimony, which was submitted jointly with Kenton and Overlook, touched on a few different things, but I'm only here to talk about one thing. Our community is appealing to this body to extend the M overlay. And simply put, this is just a provision to require 25% active use, where the base zoning allows and indeed encourages that use. We submitted this in the discussion draft. It wasn't acknowledged. You heard earlier on there are 50 plus comments for this now proposed draft. Roughly half of them come from our neighborhood, forwarding this request to this body. This body can be the means of course correction when our city cannot hear or will not hear what our communities are trying to communicate. When we look to the future, as our neighborhood is developed, we're embracing of the development of new buildings, but what we want to see is the development of communities. When we look to the future, we envision places where different people gather and form community together, and you need those active ground floor space to make that happen. We can see a place where people have different generations, where you hear different languages, where people get a chance to meet each other and build community. The course we're on right now is where people are alone in their cars, going to someplace else to access the services that don't exist in our neighborhood, where we're waiting alone in our house for Amazon or Postmates or whatever. That's not how we build communities. The purpose statement around contributing to the public realm, all of the language there is moot unless we have those public spaces where people can gather. And so that's the single ask. The good news is that there's a ready-made solution. It's already existing code. It's the M overlay. We can extend it throughout the D overlay, but we're asking in particular for this to be extended to Arbor Lodge to join us with our adjacent neighborhoods. And so that's the principal ask that I have of this group, and I thank you for considering it.
Thank you very much. Jonathan, and then
Hi.
after Miles, we'll have Peter Fry and Ted Labby. Thanks.
Hey, good evening. I'm Jonathan Conkle. I'm a certified planner and architectural and urban designer. Thanks for giving me the chance to come and say a few words about DOZA and how we can improve it. First of all, I think having clear and objective standards makes development easier and quicker, which I think we can all agree is very important in the midst of our housing crisis. Therefore, having quality standards really matters. Discretionary review allows commitment to high design and flexibility to innovate for those who want to pursue it, but the baseline standards need to be good for everyone else. Most projects are not the architectural equivalent of haute couture, and the owners would rather just accept some objective standards rather than spend time in discretionary review. That's why we need to have good base standards to create good basic buildings that play well together. The reason DOZA was initiated was the design quality was falling short. We're seeing a lot of fast fashion out there and not classics or even casual basics like we want. Most projects are not going to be the Yves Saint Laurents or the Jean-Paul Gaultiers. So we're thinking if you don't really have the budget or the chops, maybe you should stick with something a little more basic. The public hasn't been educated very much on this topic, and the city hasn't done much to figure out what citizens really value in our built environment. But we can fix that by doing visual preference surveys with the public, kind of like the ones that Metro did about 20 years ago. So here's my top 9 basic design things that I think will give us the sort of timeless classic architecture that will continue Portland's tradition. Regular window placement. Windows should be stacked vertically and consistent size and shape. Symmetry. Facades should basically be symmetrical. Aspect ratio. Windows should be taller than wide. No undercuts. Cantilevers over the sidewalk create dark, unappealing spaces, which is really unpleasant in a already dark climate.
It'll need to be a long sentence here, but
okay.
wrap up.
Minimize our pointless articulation. A lot of these things like flanges and doodads just make buildings more complicated and more expensive. We don't need that. Let's just stick with the basics. We know how to do this. Let's do it.
Thank you very much. Miles?
Hi, my name is Miles. I'm with Plan Design Explorer, just like Jonathan, and I'm going to expand a little bit on that. But contrary to a lot of contemporaneous ideas around design, design isn't just a matter of personal preference. There are rules to good design that you have to follow, similar to music. I don't go into the kitchen and bang on a bunch of pots and pans and call it good music, similarly to I don't buy a bunch of Hardy panel and piece it together and call it good design. But that being said, the whole process that we're looking at here should be a lot more simplified, and it should be an easy path for developers, similarly to what Jonathan said, to where they already know what needs to be built. They already know what the community wants by the time they buy the piece of property that they want to develop on. We shouldn't be spending weeks in design fights with the rest of the community when we really just need housing to get built. We purely, as been mentioned by a number of other speakers here today, we don't have enough housing. There's not enough places for people to live, period. And, well, I mean, a lot of what we're getting now isn't stuff that the community wants. So we need to be investing more time and resources into doing visual preference surveys so that developers just already have a program for them the moment they show up to the table. We're not spending time fighting, and we should be limiting the amount of time that we spend in type 3 design review as much as possible, because weeks and months spent in design review means that we're not getting the housing that we need on the ground. So instead of constantly fighting with each other over the basics of just providing enough housing, let's put in a little effort up front, ask our neighbors what they want to see in our city in the future. That way we can just get to building it. And I'm going to end short.
Thank you very much.
Yep.
We have Peter Fry and Ted Labby, and that's the last card I have. So if there's anyone else who'd like to speak, please bring your card up. Okay, great. And Heather, you can jump in if you'd like right now. Peter?
So I'm Peter Finley Fry. I'm here for two reasons. One is myself and one is for the Central East Side Industrial Council. We got I'm vice chair of the Land Use Committee, Land Use and Urban Design. And we are very active, obviously, because the Inner East Side has a lot of design review going on forever. And we were concerned about your process. We were concerned about the design review advisory meetings, that they would basically become a decision-making process without notice, without record, without participation. And the Planning Bureau and Sustainability and BDS has recognized that is a legal problem. I'm not a lawyer, I'm a planner, but they have suggested that we should only have one advisory meeting, which is consistent with the one pre-application conference. It's very important that when people deliberate to a decision, there's a notice of that deliberation, there's a record of that deliberation, and there's a right to participate in that deliberation. The second issue is my own. Portland, and I don't want to run out of time, but Portland's very strange. You want to be weird, but you're strange. And it's the only place that I know of where you don't have to go through site design review. In every other jurisdiction, I go through site design review, and all the planning issues get worked out in that process, not in Portland. And I've had two horrible experiences with large sites that are outside of these zones having enormous planning problems. I need to get public involved, and I can't. So I'm asking you to consider making design review and volunteer situation where if I want to go through design review and I'm willing to pay for it, why can't I do it? It would really help me out on at least these two projects that I have suffered with through the building permit process with no process. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much. Heather?
Hi, sorry about the technical difficulties, but fortunately, you had a chance to see our website. So what you have hopefully in front of you is a copy of the Division Main Street Design Guidelines. And let me just back up. My name is Heather Flint Chatto. I'm the director of the Portland Main Streets Design Initiative, and I'm an urban planner of about 20 years. I'm also a sustainability consultant with a small business. And this project represents a significant labor of love. It represents about I don't know, more than $100,000 of professional donated work over the last 6 years by many community leaders. One of your former planning commissioners, Marcy McAnally, was our low bono consultant. This project started in 2013. We came to the city and said, our neighborhood is redeveloping. We don't have any tools. And we asked for staff resources, and that was not available to us at that time. So we took our own initiative and decided to create an inter-neighborhood coalition of 7 different neighborhood associations and business associations, including Sustainable Southeast and Southeast Uplift. And we met for 2 years of monthly public meetings with appointed and elected members. These meetings were open to the public. And over that time, we wrote an RFP, and then we hired Marcy McAnally and Joy Davis with Design Culture Lab, a minority women-owned emerging small business. And we worked with Portland State University to do a divisions perception survey, which had 300 responses, which is pretty much equivalent to, I think, what was going on around the mixed-use zoning time. And then we worked with Architecture for Humanity, and we did 10 customized art installations up and down the corridor at places where people would shop, do business, take the bus. And we had vision cards that people would take, and then they would go and take the online survey. We received 450 of those vision cards. And today I also would like to offer you 150 surveys that we've received on visioning and DOZA and the Conservation Code update. And the majority of these people, we actually submitted 33 of these earlier in the deadline for the first round of comments, and those were not included.
We need to start wrapping up.
Okay, those were not included in the summary, so you missed 25% of the comments. We also asked staff to bring forward our Main Street design guidelines because we wrote these with only a few pages specific to division, and that these design guidelines are actually for any neighborhood because we studied the patterns across the city. And so what we've done is had 7 different neighborhood and business associations adopt these guidelines. And now we've been working with Selwood Moreland to adapt these, and Woodstock has adopted them, and now Alberta is interested. So we hope that you'll take a look at these. Let me just finish my quick sentence. After
Okay,
6 years, can I just have one more minute?
So
just one more minute? Given the amount of work that we've done for free, it would be really
thanks.
Okay, thank you so much. So the main thing is that we've heard that community members would just like to have a voice in shaping the character of their place because everyone does deserve good design, and that we think that we've done some of the work that would support the low-rise commercial storefront analysis and remind you also of the Portland Main Street Design Handbook that already exists.
Out of respect for everyone, I think I'm going to have to cut it off there.
So
Thank
those
you
3
very much.
documents, we'd like to collaborate where possible to support you.
All
So
right,
here
and
are 100 and...
Can this be uploaded? And this is a large. Can this be uploaded? I assume to the public comment document of this size.
We've scanned them.
Okay.
And we've
It works nowadays.
put them in Excel.
Thank
Which
you.
we did last time too.
We have Ted Labby. And are there any other comments coming?
Hi, thanks for the opportunity to speak to you tonight. My name is Ted Labby. I'm Executive Director of the Urban Green Space Institute. And I want to acknowledge the fine work done by your staff on this. We did some earlier comments on the discussion draft. And there's a lot in this on building articulation, facades, aesthetics. I mean, that is the bread and butter of design review. But I want to echo some of the earlier concerns that we've heard around design review being a barrier to getting affordable housing built in this city. And it's also, there's so much space taken up with the building appearance that we can't get to things like how we're going to deal with this climate crisis that's before us, and how we're going to get buildings out on the landscape that are adaptive to the heat waves that we're going to be experiencing. So I have extensive comments, which I've turned in. I encourage you to look over. I'm just going to hit on a few highlights tonight. I think this is our best opportunity for a long time to get smart green infrastructure into the commercial corridors beyond the central city. I've talked to staff. I don't think there's any other planning process coming. So I'm considering, how do we get more green infrastructure in these basically heat islands that are threading across the city? I think eco roofs should be required. And if not required, we should at least ascribe a few more points to them. They're only worth 2 points. It's quite possible, I did a little analysis in my letter, it's quite possible for a designer to not do any green infrastructure elements in a design at all. There's ways to get your points other ways, and I think that's a problem with this. So just generally, I'd like to see a little less emphasis on design appearance and more about green infrastructure and how we create more resilient buildings. And I think earlier, Oriana asked at the last hearing a great question about how this process, design review process, has created invisible barriers to getting affordable housing built. And I wasn't entirely satisfied with the staff's response to that question. So I would encourage you to keep probing on that topic, because I think there's a lot more that we can do around that topic with design review. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Last card is from Tim Davis.
Hey, guys. Oh. Yes. Hey, you guys. I'm Tim Davis, and I support nearly all the aspects of the DOZA proposal from what I remember in my total fog of jet lag. I just got back this morning. So I'll focus on more generalities instead of like page 52, paragraph 3. So first of all, I'd say that we should change the code to say that design review cannot reduce the height or FAR of a proposed building. And also, Portland planners are constantly bringing up this number of 123,000 new households expected. But that does not include hundreds of thousands of people in Portland itself and in surrounding areas and well beyond the region who are desperately trying to find housing that they can afford in or within a short distance of Portland itself. Our housing crisis is almost unimaginable to all the people who came here to testify who are comfortably housed. We need very intense transit-oriented development in a multitude of urban centers, Gateway, Lloyd, Beaverton, Tiger, all within Portland itself, Powell, Sandy, 82nd, 122nd, many more. Our city is only in its infancy, and although it feels like it's in an awkward teenage years right now. So I'm I'm also conflicted about zoning in general. 1924 and 1959 were our two keystone moments in Portland's history of zoning, and they were both incredibly discriminatory. Both times. And like Henry and Ted and others mentioned, our housing crisis and climate crisis are the two biggest issues we have to address. And I'd also love to see many more hearings held in East Portland. Folks there are almost never represented at any of these hearings that have enormous impact on them without their realization. And I would love to see the Design Commission include at least a commissioner representing renters and those from underserved communities. And also, having just spent a lot of time in Lisbon, this city feels empty. Oh my gosh, we just really need to densify badly, and then we can get actual decent public transportation.
Thank you very much. That's the end of our oral testimony today. As mentioned before, we have a chance to send in testimony through, I think, the 15th, if I remember that correctly. So I think that I'm going to suggest that we take a 5-minute breather. So commissioners can look through their notes, take a breath, figure out what you like to share, and then we'll do a go round and while during that time we can have staff come on up. So let's take a 5-minute break. All right, I think we're going to reconvene here. Thanks for letting us stretch. And so at the end of, when we have extensive hearings like this, it's nice for us to have a chance to debrief. We will not actually have staff come up here because this is really for the commissions to share with one another their perceptions from the testimony they've heard so far, recognizing that there may be more forthcoming. I know that some people reference some documents that have been submitted that I haven't seen, even though I looked last night to see everything uploaded at that time. So we'll do a go round. If you have questions you want to have staff follow up on, ideas that have made you think that might roll towards amendments, or just responses to what we've heard, that's all welcome. And I'm going to maybe start. Would you like to volunteer to start, Chris?
Sure, why not?
Thank you.
So I think I start with the main concern, the same as I asked about in our last session, which is cost. And not just cost for affordable housing, but cost for all construction, new construction in the city. Construction costs are way up, and I'm hoping we can find a way for design review to proactively try and address that and find less expensive ways to build things. Definitely resonated with the discussion of green infrastructure as part of this process. I think we should take a careful look at the issue of representation in the process, what kinds of roles we have on the commission, where people can participate, whether that's meetings in East Portland or other ways to engage the community. I hope we'll have a robust. Pardon?
You're fading out a little bit.
Oh, sorry. I hope we'll have a robust discussion about where and when we regulate height in this process. I know a number of people advocated for not being able to restrict height. I think that's something we should talk about. And I'm listening intently to the conversation about guidelines and design standards. That's not my area of expertise, and I'm learning a lot through this process. So thank you.
Okay. There was someone who testified right at the beginning, had just rapid fire testimony about FAR and height restrictions, and I would love to find out more about that, because she was making a lot of points that you almost would need to unpack. I would need to unpack. So I noticed about the signs. I think that's something that we should look at. And I was there was one phrase where they said, "Why are we not have design review for being able to live into the future heat waves that we're going to have?" And that made a big impression on me. So I would like to talk more about smart green infrastructure, and at least putting more points into that so that we get more of that kind of design.
Brian, would you like to jump in?
Microphone.
Yeah. Is your microphone on?
It is on. You just
Okay.
I think that green infrastructure topic is one that we should be looking at closely, how building by building can be adding to that GSI across the city. Resilient buildings. I'll leave it at that.
Well, reading through a lot of the testimony and hearing testimony tonight, I'm impressed with a lot of positive comments about the process overall. I personally really appreciated BDS's presentation on design advice, the DAR process. I tried to engage in that process on a project in South Waterfront and had some real problems. And from what I got from the presentation, it looks like it's should be much better for folks to be engaged. It's probably needless to say, I totally resonate with a lot of the green infrastructure comments with regard to points or optional versus required for eco roofs, trees, green walls, etc. I think a lot of good points were made. Glad to see landscape architect will be on the design commission. You got a twofer with Zeri Santner by virtue of her actually being on representing RAC, as I understand it. I personally feel, and I feel the same way about the PSC, that it would be advisable, and I would make a recommendation that there be somebody with an ecological, natural resource background on both bodies. I think that's sorely needed. So I'll be discussing that later. A lot of conflicting comments about affordable housing, the impact on affordable housing. I feel very strongly, and Chair Livingston brought this up at the end of the last meeting. However we proceed, we should not dumb down design for affordable housing. I lived in a housing project in Philadelphia, pretty wealthy neighborhood. The housing was incredibly shoddy that we lived in, and everybody knew where we lived, and it really had a huge impact on me. And I know there are ways that you can have excellence in design without jacking up the costs necessarily. Years ago, I heard a presentation by Michael Piatek, who was then in Oakland. I think he went to University of Washington later, and had some fabulous examples of artisan work by folks who live in the community in Oakland. And I just hope we don't go the route of because of the housing crisis, that we start treating affordable housing differently. I do not see any standards that relate explicitly to the Willamette River. I'm concerned about that, and I'm hopeful staff can come back to us with some specific standards that relate to the Willamette River. Let's see. And it will be helpful, and this is a very complex process from my perspective. I'm on a very steep learning curve. I have found it really helpful in the past to get documents back from staff that address the comments, especially there were some that there were numerous comments on a particular topic, to get a staff response that we can look at and think about, as well as what we heard from folks who testified.
I want to address the public again just to say thank you again for being here and for your comments. I'm still wrapping my head around a lot of DOZA, but I'll just quickly say that I think what has so far resonated with me the most, and what I think is the most urgent, is maximizing opportunities for affordable housing. And I definitely need to delve a little bit more into what the impacts of design review is on that, as well as addressing sustainability and planning for the climate reality that is impending. I want to say that I hear folks around representation and community engagement, and I would love to have more conversations to do that better in the future with staff. Also from staff, I heard a lot about Arbor Lodge, and I read a lot of the written testimony. If I could just get a little bit more context on that situation. I wasn't here last meeting, so maybe that was addressed then, but I would love some help with that. I heard a lot about character and historic preservation, which I appreciate, but I also want us to think about how our cities and our zoning have, one, been so exclusionary in the past, and also think about who had access to architecture, who had access to really have a say in creating the built environment that Portland has now. And it wasn't a lot of people of color. It wasn't, it was a very homogenous group. And I think we need to keep that in mind when we're talking about character and historic preservation. That's all. Thank you.
I will jump in. I've got, having developed affordable housing for a number of years, I support having level treatment for affordable housing. I also share anxiety that sometimes discretionary reviews can be used to prolong, make more expensive, or thwart affordable housing in neighborhoods. So if we make this change, I would want it to be tested to see whether it is used in such fashion, because that would be a serious concern for me. I support the green building and resilience ideas, although I think that those are more base code suggestions. And we should note on the map that design review only covers small threads of our city. In general, I would be much more comfortable if we came up with a proposal that lifted up some thresholds and applied design everywhere. So we don't have differential treatment between some neighborhoods who are able to turn people out and speak and do great work coming up with feedback and suggestions for staff, while other neighborhoods are not represented at all. There are large buildings happening in neighborhoods across the city, and some neighborhoods have, close character. People care about their neighborhood wherever they live. So I'm not sure if there's room for a big compromise. I would say raise the height limit from 55 to 75 feet and apply it everywhere in the city, or something like that would, I think, address some of the concerns I have about equitable location of design overlay zones. And I think I'll say lastly that I have to admit a bias. My company is named after the Big Orange Splot, and if you know this book with your kids, then you'll know that this would not have gotten through design review in most places. But although I appreciate the attention to compatibility, I also believe that variety is the spice of life. And some of the slides presented show extremely varied landscapes. I think that's awesome. So I will put a vote for having eclectic buildings, because that's what I think makes interesting neighborhoods. And further, that I think that if we go down the path of assuming that to create a neighborhood that is going to be loved means small, then that's a difficult path to follow with have climate and equity goals in mind. And we should embrace neighborhoods that are vibrant and eclectic, and that includes large, wacky buildings. Thanks.
So thank you very much to everyone who is still here that came to provide testimony, and thanks also to you, Eli, for chairing the hearing. Design Commission is very grateful to you for hosting. We've been working on DOZA I've been working on DOZA for the entire tenure of my time on the Portland Design Commission, which is just over 4 years. DOZA was a new idea around I think it happened in 2015, and the Bureau of Planning and Sustainability hired a consultant to really scrub the process and ensure that what we had been doing for the past 30 years was working well still in the context that we are working in today. And Mark Hinshaw's initial report, I think, was very strongly in favor of Portland maintaining its process and just tweaking it around the edges to improve public involvement, improve the efficiencies in the hearings room, and then look at simplifying the guidelines that the Design Commission is responsible for, because there are a lot of them. Central City Fundamentals and guidelines for many sub-districts, and a lot of them are dated. And I know that staff at the Bureau of Planning and Sustainability, once they are done with this DOZA-specific work, are going to turn their attention to Central City Fundamentals and some of the other tools that are available to Design Commission. So I've been working on this for a number of years, and it's really fantastic to be nearing the end of it when this will become code and we will be able to implement this fully in the hearings room. My thoughts, partially in response to what we have heard today, and then partially truly my own thoughts about what is included in these documents, in the proposed draft documents. I agree that sustainability and issues around sustainability don't live just in the D overlay. That stuff belongs in the base code. And to the extent that sustainability is addressed in the guidelines and the standards in DOZA, it needs to be well aligned. If it stays in the point distribution system, I agree with the person who provided testimony that said that big points need to be assigned to the things that we really prioritize. And I think that sustainability and how we look to the future of our buildings is truly one of the most important issues of our time. There is an immense amount of future work identified in the staff report. The whole Section 5 is all about what the future work will be related to this. And character statements were referenced either directly by folks from Landmarks Commission or also obliquely by people from many neighborhoods. And this is very important work. I think that it would be helpful to see a timeline about how this will roll out. The character of our neighborhoods is one of the most important topics that people who come to testify to Design Commission testify about. People really love their neighborhoods. They want to maintain the character of their neighborhoods. That doesn't mean neighborhoods can't change and that buildings can't grow and that there can't be more density and more aggressive development. But the character is so incredibly important when that development is happening, and maintaining that character is so important. And to whoever it is that called out the fact that the de-overlay should be extended, thank you for doing that, because I think that there are many people who are not here tonight in Portland's neighborhoods who would like the de-overlay to be extended to their neighborhoods so that they have the opportunity to participate in the discussion and in the public process that flows from design review. I'm very glad that we are maintaining the design advice request. Simplified guidelines are a goal of mine. Character statements are a goal of mine. Rethinking the point distribution is a goal of mine. And affordable housing is a goal of mine. That is the most important issue of our time in the city of Portland. And I absolutely do not agree with having affordable housing withdrawn from consideration of Type 3 review. I agree with you 100%, Mike, and with Dave Oddie, who testified, and Tony Bernal, who testified, that holding affordable housing developers to a lesser standard is a fast track to creating stigma. And I think that every person who lives in an affordable housing building deserves an active ground floor. They deserve a community that functions well. And they deserve for their building and everybody who lives in their building to be an active, engaged member of the community. And if you live in a building that does not look like every other building or doesn't have the same characteristics of every other building in the neighborhood, you live in a building that is stigmatized, and everybody knows that the poor kids live there. So I'll be providing more testimony on that in the future. That's all I have. Thank you.
I love being at this part of the process so that I can just say yes, pretty much. But I've been thinking a lot about. I lived for a bit in New York City, and I actually was lucky enough to work in a historic preservational architectural firm, and so we talked about like what does it mean for buildings to be lovable and delightful and inclusive. And I think they underscore, of course, on the inclusive because it's people that make the city. And I think having more people be part of this process is so important, and having people having meetings, talking about meetings in East Portland is really important to me. Also, I'm looking forward to conversations about what could membership on commission look like. Was moved by the idea of renters being there because I think that is definitely underrepresented in terms of the process, especially in moments when the housing market is shifting so quickly that that's just a critical voice to have in these proceedings. That some green infrastructure. I'm really excited about that conversation, and also the menu deep dive. I appreciate staff answering the question of some of the what ended up on the cutting room floor yesterday. So I'm still processing that, but I'm looking forward to having that conversation of like what do those menu weightings look like according to our priorities, particularly anti-displacement. And I'll stop there. I'm going to do one metaphor because Miles brought it up, so I get to, because I am not an architect, but I was an opera major. So he brought up music, And so, to your point, Eli, about like eclectic complement and contrast, my favorite period in musical, and it should be yours too, is the romantic, the late 19th century, which was both romanticism and neoclassicism, and they couldn't be more different. Like you had Liszt and you had like late Beethoven, and they were just, they hated each other. Like it was this nemesis, but they fed each other, and it's this beautiful, like complex order of different systems that create this complexity of ordered chaos, and that I think is what makes neighborhoods beautiful, and it makes them inclusive and it welcomes them. And I just really appreciate also, Daisy, your comment about like whose character are we preserving and whose history and whose future can we make room for? And I think that that's a really important conversation that I'm looking forward to continuing. Thank you all for your testimony, and thank you all for being here. And thank you to staff so much. I'm looking forward to boot camp. Okay, I'm done.
A couple of quick comments. Transfer of FAR. It just seems like the rules have been changing, and it's hard to follow for people. I think both applicants and design commission. So it needs to be clarified and standardized and then kept in place for some time so it isn't constantly shifting around so people don't know what's going on. And then I think I support also just if FAR is there, it's not subject to the arbitrary movements of the design commission. It has to be just allowed outright. And the same thing with height. So that doesn't become an issue during design review hearings. I thought the comment on having some hearings out in East Portland, I think we've only had 2 projects out there. So why not have some in place? Rather than bringing everybody here, we can go out there someplace, and just have them on the rare occasions we have a project. Let's see. And green infrastructure is something we should be pushing wherever we can, however it looks. And then affordable housing. A good design need not be expensive. Requires a concept and attention to massing and details. And that is a standard that should apply to all buildings and structures.
Thank you.
There we go. I just want to echo Daisy's thanks to all of you who testified tonight, especially for the folks who testified for the first time. That was named earlier, and I think it's worth naming again that it's not easy to come up and speak to a bunch of people at a dais. It takes a lot of courage to do that and to speak honestly about issues that are important to you. So thank you for that. And also want to honor the folks who couldn't be in the space for various limitations. That's been brought up in a few spaces, and I think that's an important part of testimony that was raised tonight, but then an important thing that we should take to heart in our deliberations as both the Design Commission and the Planning and Sustainability Commission is how do we ensure that this opportunity to have a voice in what a neighborhood looks like is extended to all people in that neighborhood and to future residents of the buildings as well. What's resonated with me is both the issues that Mike and Julie have brought up in terms of affordable housing not being stigmatized. I think that's very important. But I wonder also, is there an opportunity for design review where residents of affordable housing can have more input in terms of what they want a space to look like? And it's not just up to the neighbors to say what that space is and how it should look and how it should fit into the neighborhood, but that there's voice for those folks as well. And to encourage us to continue to ask the questions of who's affected by design and who gets to have a voice. Building off of Daisy's comments earlier, I think that if you look at the history of design and who's been able to design buildings and design and define the character of neighborhood, it has been incredibly limited and incredibly white. And that's led to the history of displacement and redlining and defining certain communities with certain characters. I think that word character is really powerful and meaningful, and I want to honor the folks who've brought it up tonight and how important that neighborhood character is to you, but also note that it can be a little bit of a watchword that says that there are people and there are kinds of buildings and there are kinds of communities who are not welcome in that space. I'm not sure if that's your intent, but I want to make sure that as we talk about the design review process and we talk about design standards, that we are defining standards and review in such a way that we are being welcoming to spaces. I want to re-raise some of the questions that I raised the last time we had the staff presentation, and just to note, and Sandra and I have emailed to get a little bit more clarity. I'll be having more of a briefing, and perhaps there's opportunity to avoid quorum, but for other folks to come be part of this conversation, to think about, are there unintended consequences from design review? It seems like the DOZA amendments are streamlining and making things so that buildings are more affordable, but also beautiful and good spaces to live in. But I want to really think through, are there potential rent impacts in terms of who can qualify for buildings? If rent increases or requires an income that is 3 times the cost of rent in a building, if that threshold is $40, that can potentially limit someone's ability to qualify for a building. So I'm curious to know more about the income for folks who can qualify for design review buildings, and then also potentially what those demographics are. Who gets to live in a design reviewed building? Are we potentially creating barriers on that front? And the same goes for commercial space as well. And not just in terms of what is the impact on cost, but also what is the impact in terms of our design choices, and acknowledging that many of the folks who are making these design choices are white folks. Are we potentially creating design that has culturally specific limitations? Are there opportunities to think about design in a way that is inclusive of Black and Indigenous folks, of people of color, of immigrants, of folks who have different approaches to design? And want to just alert folks in the room to the work of Amara Perez at PCC, who's talked about some of the design review for that campus and thinking about how to make culturally specific spaces that are welcoming across cultures. And I'd like to encourage us to think about, how do we do more of that in this conversation? I think DOZA is a step in the right direction, but I want to encourage us to be bold as commissions and think, how much further can we go to create stronger character, not just for neighborhoods, for the city? And in closing, I want to build off of Steph's metaphor for music, because I'm a recovering jazz musician. So this is a great opportunity to kind of close that loop of music. But in like a jazz space, people are improvising. You're all working off kind of the same chords, that there's a general sense of like what makes a song. But then each musician gets to speak in their own voice in that space. And I want to encourage us in that design space to think about, how do we introduce more voices? How do we let more voices speak in that space and respond to other voices, and create neighborhoods and communities that are truly diverse, both in their visual impact and in terms of who has the ability to live there? Thank you.
Thanks.
So like Julie, I have also been participating in the DOZA process for several years, and I'm very excited to be towards the end of it, and hopefully we'll wrap up sooner than later. And from this particular session of discussion, I think 2 things that I'm very concerned with are affordable housing being moved to a type 2 versus a type 3, and the potential stigma and other issues that come with that. And also, I think only one person actually mentioned this, or the testing of standards and the threshold at which they were tested and the potential loopholes of those. In reviewing the standards myself, I could see how it would be not too difficult to manipulate those standards into potentially creating a lower quality than what we hope of design, than what we hope for the equivalent design review threshold. So I just would like more information about that, about what the testing levels were. I believe that's in the packet, but I'm not sure. So I'd appreciate staff's help with that.
Thank you. I'm going to interject one moment to note that Commissioner Bachrach always has to be the first vote because of his last name, and now he gets the last word on the go-round.
So there's some equity there. Couple of things. One, your comment about you hope we're at the end of DOZA, based on all the concerns and conversations people want to have, I'm not sure how close we are to it. I guess the lens I would bring to this is we started with the goal of streamlining and making design review a more efficient and functional tool. and I would caution that we don't allow mission creep. Design review is not going to be a panacea for a lot of the policy concerns and issues that are very legitimately raised tonight. I won't go too far into green infrastructure because I know that's something people are passionate about, but that if we're not careful, that can be mission creep. Is if we're designing what a building looks like, is an eco roof, is bird glazing, is that telling us what that building looks like, or are those just desirable amenities? And if they are desirable amenities, shouldn't they be in the base zone somewhere so that they apply across the board, not just to those buildings that fall into the design review issue? Another one that I really appreciate Doug Klotz's comments in his letter, but he had one I disagree with. He wants more points for affordable commercial space being in a building. Now, affordable commercial space is a great objective. There's been a lot of different groups and people trying to figure out how to create it. I don't see how that fits into design review. I think it would be a mistake to let the mission creep come into design review, where design review is looking at a building and you can just throw points for doing something good that doesn't really address the design of the building. It's just a feel-good thing. And I'm concerned about other points that I don't quite understand because I'm not a design person. I see a point if you put a plaque on your building. And I fear a little bit that as the committee designed all the points and standards, it became sort of grab where you can and get a point here, get a point there. And are you really going to produce a desirable product, or are you just going to force the architect design team to get 2 points because they can put a plaque there? So I think there needs to be a little bit more self-editing on what gets a point, and is it really, one, directed at design, and two, is it directed at achieving a better design and a better building? So those are my cautions. I'm going to run through a couple of very specific points that I heard and just that made sense to me. Several people have talked about height should not be discretionary. I agree with that. Height, like FAR, is set by the zoning code. It should stay as it shouldn't be at the discretion of the design commission to change it. The first person, this might have been the issue you were wondering about, Katie, was on density transfers. And that's something it was Christy White, the first attorney, the woman who spoke. And I think I very much agree with the point she was making. I want to be sure I understand it. Maybe this is one staff can follow up on. We're telling design review can't limit the FAR that the zoning code assigns, but it appears we've created a circumstance where if you get your FAR through a transfer, well, then the design process could in effect throw out that transferred FAR. I think that undermines the intent of when we created the FAR density transfer. So if I'm understanding the issue she raised, I think I agree with her point. So that's maybe one staff can put on their list. And again, I wasn't sure why we're limiting the number of DARs, design advisory reviews. If staff and the applicant feel a second one would be necessary, and I assume the applicant has to pay, I would think we would want to encourage that. Several people mentioned, and I'm not sure where I think about this, but increasing the exemption for housing projects. Right now, if you're building 4 units or less and 35 feet or less, you're exempt. Several people suggested that should be a higher exemption. I'm open to that idea. I'm not sure how that would work or what the right number would be, and I'm not sure what the appetite is for that. But it seems to me this sort of goes to the affordable housing issue. Maybe something bigger than a fourplex should be exempt. There was a comment, and I didn't testify tonight. I read it somewhere, talking about they felt there were improvements in exemptions for smaller commercial retail build-outs. They talked about, and I don't remember the specifics, and they suggested they thought there should be even more exemptions for smaller commercial build-outs. You're doing a door. So I just would like to explore that because it struck me as, in the interest of streamlining, helping smaller businesses with the cost of developing build-outs, that maybe there could be more issues that could come off the table and wouldn't have to go through the design review. And maybe staff I can find that letter, or maybe staff has some ideas that they would at least present for our consideration on more exemptions on commercial retail build-outs. God, my notes are a mess.
Well, this won't be your last chance.
Then I'll rest there.
Okay, thank you.
Oh, I did have one more. I'm sorry, one more. I'm a little confused, and I suspect this is something on staff's list. All the testimony from the Main Street people and their references to Main Street design standards. I guess I need a sort of a baseline primer. What are they asking for? What are some directions we might want to go? I'm not sure how all this Main Street design overlay fits with DOZA. So I don't really have a proposal. I just kind of want to understand what all the Main Street people's fundamental concerns are.
I'm sure after the meeting there'll be an opportunity for that based on a hand raised. I will say we are a little bit early. If anyone had an idea come to mind based on other people's comments and wanted to have some burning idea, we're all together. As long as it keeps to like 1 minute or something, we could do that. Would anyone like to just do a couple popcorn for like 5-10 minutes, and then we'll be done early? Do you have something?
Well, I just had a couple of comments, and that was the 10 Commandments with the 3 design tenets.
Can you go a little closer to the mic?
Yeah, maybe that should be increased to 12. Design for coherency has not been included, and that's an important one for the Design Commission to have as part of our toolbox. And also, I think for the applicant to have a concept when they come in, and that could be part of the context. So we know what the design intent is, and they're clear and articulate that when they come in for DAR. So,
okay.
Just 2 comments.
Great. Any other additional thoughts that got piqued? Oh, thank you, Jeff.
Just had one. As we sort of fine-tune and massage this, I think it's really important to keep in mind the design review process in Central City versus when you get out into the neighborhoods. And I think it's a very different kind of review. And I don't know how often you're doing design review outside of Central City, because my understanding is most developments outside of Central City go through the standards, not design review. So I just think that's a distinction we should keep in mind. There's sort of more ability to absorb costs and refashion your building to meet subjective design standards in the context of a Central City versus you're trying to get a 16-unit apartment built on the east side. It's a very different, I think, I don't know what theme you go in when you're building a 16-unit apartment on Southeast 82nd, but you probably don't have as articulated a theme. You want to get it built, and you want it to be affordable. So we should keep that distinction in mind.
I'll toss out one more. I thought along the way. I want to give a big plug to the public realm component. For me, that's the most important tenet. I know there's a lot of argument for parity, but I think that in order for the public to celebrate infill development, we have to love our streets, and that means having great pedestrian bike environments. That's how people experience buildings by and large, is the first 20-25 feet. And so I think that's an absolutely critical thing for Design Commission to bring to projects to make sure that area is done superbly. I think just as a process question for staff is that we have so many granular suggestions for the design standards, and then maybe we need some process to handle that a little more sophisticated than our typical big spreadsheets. So maybe it's a little working group to help do triage to say these are some design standard suggestions that we all generally like versus these merit more discussion. I'm not sure what it is, but I have the suspicion that having seen multiple several page lists, we might need a way to pare down what we cover, or maybe find some consensus on some items, knowing that we'll discuss others. So I'm not sure what that is. Any other final comments? Then no one got fired for ending a meeting early. We are, this is the last joint session of the commissions until later in the process. Oh, okay. I thought I was going to get fired for ending early. This is going to be agenda item is going to be continued at the Design Commission meeting on November 7th, 2019, and at the PSC meeting on November 12th, 2019. So we'll split up and do separate work and recombine, I believe, in early 2020. And with that, we are adjourned. Thank you. Yeah, I know. It shows up.